Welcome to The Interview, a podcast by the Bailiwick Express. I'm Laura Clayton. I recently met with a group of people from the Guernsey Employment Trust. The Guernsey Employment Trust helps people with disabilities find and maintain employment. Rosa is one of their successful clients. She, her support worker Kate, and Niamh, who worked with Rosa at Guernsey Post, told me how their processes work. And Nikki, the Get Chief Officer, told me why their work is so important.
Current UK statistics show that only 53% of disabled people are in employment compared to 83% of non-disabled people. So that leads to a disability employment gap of approximately 30%. And we know that there's a large number of disabled people who want to work but struggle to find or maintain work because of the barriers that they face. And we know this because last year we were supporting approximately 229 disabled people at any given time. Also, to help paint the landscape a bit, in 2015, there's a UK charity called Scope, and they wrote a paper, and in their paper, they said that if the UK increased the numbers of disabled people into employment by just 5%, they predicted there would be an increase in GDP of £23 billion by 2030. Now, I often get told in the Guernsey context, you swap billions for millions, so that would be an increase in Guernsey GDP by 23 million. But the reason for GET isn't just about saving money or making money. I mean, if we look at it from an employer's point of view, there's a really strong business case for having a diverse and inclusive workforce. So, research says, and we see it ourselves, that generally it can be increased profitability, having a workforce that are more creative, better at problem solving, but also just having a workforce that represents the community in which you live and in which you serve. And an inclusive workforce values that everybody's different and everybody does things in different ways. And then that's where we come in.
Yeah.
So Guernsey Employment Trust is changing the way that employers define and view disability by connecting disabled people to jobs that match their talent. And our charity was established in 2015 following the successful commissioning of supported employment services to the third sector. If I just give you some statistics, we are now in our 9th year. And last year we supported 163 employers, which included 31 States of Guernsey departments. And we reached a milestone of our 600th paid job since the charity was established. And I'm really proud to say that our retention rate as of the end of last year was 72%. So we know we're getting it right with regards to job matching, and we know that we've got high impact there with stopping people falling out of employment and claiming benefits. But just to look at, lastly, for the why we exist, from a client's perspective, I think we all take it for granted about if we're in work, we don't even think about it, but a secure and well-matched job can create financial stability, social inclusion, a sense of purpose, and improved health and well-being. So that's all the why. That's why we exist.
Okay, so you said the Guernsey Employment Trust was set up in 2015, but the work predates that. Is that correct? Through a different organisation that predated the Guernsey Employment Trust?
Yes, so we used to be called Interwork Services. We were a department of, back then it was Health and Social Services Department.
Yeah.
And in 2014, the States of Guernsey and the Guernsey Community Foundation were looking at the function of Interwork, and for the money spent, the outcomes, the outputs, the numbers of disabled people into employment was not good.
Yeah.
So they jointly made a decision to commission it out to the third sector, and it's been fantastic. It has been.
Yeah, I mean, some of the statistics that you just gave us, actually, it seems like a big improvement. Did you say 229 clients?
So we support 229 clients at any given time.
Yeah.
So that is generally what as of last year, when you look at a snapshot of our caseload,
Yeah.
that was how many people were on a caseload at that point. So obviously it fluctuates as people come in and out, but that's the numbers that we're supporting at any given time.
Okay, so in terms of supporting clients,
Yeah.
how is that done? I mean, we've got Kate here, but between you, I mean, can you explain how is the support offered to your clients?
So what makes us different to other agencies, if you like, is that we use vocational profiling and work experience to really get to know someone and to test their abilities.
So profiling of them as their personality, their skill sets?
So we're looking at everything really. We act a bit like private investigators. So we're looking at their skills from what they've done in the past, employment wise or voluntary wise. We're looking at their education. We're looking at their health, their disability. We're basically building up this big picture of them to then be able to work out what work could be suitable and what support might the person need that would work for them. So we really put a lot of time in our profiling and our work experience, which I know Rosa will go on to in a minute, to really find out about people. And then when we get someone a job, the other thing that makes us different is that we can provide on-the-job support. So that looks different for everybody. But it's for the person and the employer while the individual learns their role and settles in. And that could be an hour of support ad hoc here or there, or it could be full-time for several weeks. So really it's whatever it takes to support someone in the right role and in the right environment to make it a success. And then the other difference is that the support that we offer is ongoing throughout someone's career to both them and the employer. So what we don't do is settle people in and then walk away. We just reduce the amount of support, but the door is always open to both parties, because we want it to be a success. And we want people to develop throughout their careers as well. That's how we provide support to both individuals. And before I forget, I always forget this point, our services are completely free of charge to both of those parties.
You described yourself as being like a private detective there, and Rosa was laughing. So Rosa, we will come to you in a moment, because I noticed you laughing at that point, so I want to know more about this profiling and what that's like as someone going through it, actually. But Kate, you work as a support worker, is that right?
Yes,
so
that's right.
What do you do on a day-to-day basis? How does that work?
So I manage a caseload of clients, and most of my work at the very beginning is getting to know them, finding out, meeting up, finding out what they're interested in, finding out a bit about their background, looking at CVs, looking at aspirations, what kind of things they think might suit them, and then talking about what they might need to actually be able to achieve that in the workplace. So that can take quite a while to build up that rapport, build up that trust, because obviously it's a personal relationship. You're working with people about their own aspirations and want to take your time to do that carefully and gently to provide the support that somebody needs. And then it's a question of perhaps going out to find the right employers, looking at who might be the best place to support somebody, having those conversations, seeing whether people are happy to offer work experience, voluntary work, working out what that might look like, going back with the client, introducing them, dealing with lots of paperwork to make sure everybody knows what we're all doing and keeping everybody safe. And then, as Nikki's explained, the support can be very different. It could be working with somebody to arrange how to get somewhere, confidence around using the bus, where the office might be, what the office might look like, who might be in it, introducing people. It could be working alongside somebody, finding out what equipment they might need, talking to the employer about adjustments that might need to be made. So it's very, very personal, and it's tailored individually to every client.
So Rosa you've worked closely with Kate then?
She's my second support.
Okay.
When I joined in 2019, I was with Tanya.
Okay, so Tanya would have done your initial profiling and
Yes.
initially finding out what work you wanted to do and what placement would suit you.
So she basically, she got to know me, went, this is on my CVs, what sort of skills I have, and then I attended a job club at GET, and that sort of I could rework my CV, and also they gave me quite a lot of courses, and during COVID I did quite a lot of online courses.
Yes.
Through the Guernsey Job Centre, I think. Yeah, through the Job Centre. So they set up those courses, and then I just did them.
So if you joined in 2019, actually, that was just prior to COVID, wasn't it? But you were able to continue on your progress throughout COVID then with the online resources. That must have been really useful to be able to continue your development with GET.
Yeah, and also I'd have like a weekly or bi-weekly phone call with my support worker to see how I am, how I'm getting on, and if there's anything else I could be doing. So I did that throughout the sort of lockdown, because they weren't open. Yeah. They keep closed, so they kept us going. Yeah. So it was good.
So since then you've had a work placement at Guernsey Post, is that correct?
Yeah, that was after COVID, but just after the pandemic finished, I started working at Waitrose, so I worked part-time at Waitrose. Checkouts at Admiral Park. But when I went in, they had a sort of whole health questionnaire that I filled out online, and they made adjustments, and they moved me from a different place I'm supposed to do, and so they made a lot of arrangements.
But are you enjoying it? Because that's the main thing, actually, that a lot of people, I think, it's that self-fulfillment, isn't it, with your work as well as what you're actually doing when you're there.
And it's also good because I've got the work and I know it's there.
Yeah.
And I go, like Nikki was saying, the fulfillment and the social, and knowing I can do the work and and everything. So
Okay, and then Guernsey Post, so you had a work placement there. That must have been very different work to what you're doing at Waitrose.
Yes, it was much different. So initially at the beginning I sort of shadowed all different people's part in the customer service department. So basically, if your post goes missing, you ring them up and you go, here's the tracking number, and they ask that and they go and find it. And if you don't have a tracking number, you're a bit lost. And then they sort of, like Nikki was saying, they sort of play investigators and locate where the parcel is. So I did that. And they had like a training phone, so that they'd plug it into the phone so I could listen in. Because of my eyesight, I couldn't use like the actual buttons. Yeah. So eventually, like about the third or fourth week, I was taking all the information down and then putting that onto the systems, and then it would go down to the manager down below, and then she would speak to the posties and they would sort it out. So that's mostly what I did.
Kate and Rosa, you mentioned before about a system that you were able to use, Rosa, where you could use your phone to read documents, is that right? And then dictate it back read it back to you.
Yeah, so it sort of like takes a picture of it. Yeah. And then it will speak it back to you, so you can just listen to it. So if it's too small for me to see, then I can listen to it instead of having to read it.
That must really help not just you but other people in various roles in various industries across the world. I mean, these advances, Nikki and Kate, must really help so many people.
Yeah, and I think that's very much what we did in terms of, working with Guernsey Post and Rosa and the support role, setting up the placement, was about going to places like Guernsey Blind and seeing what was available, what technology might be helpful in an office setting. Some of it very practical, so large keyboards, very cheap adjustment, made a very big difference to being able to access the work. So those kind of things that would have been a barrier to doing the job, once they were in place, Rosa's actually then able, as she's clearly explained, to take down the details, deal with customers, and actually be able to fulfil the roles. So that's where the partnership comes into its own, really, to be able to put people in touch with each other, find out what people need, find out what's out there, and then put it into the workplace.
But more and more as well, I think, because of new technologies, adjustments are much easier, or can be much easier to come by. I mean, when I started supporting somebody with a visual impairment and they required some software in the workplace, but it was so expensive. It was just out of reach for them and their employer without trying to source additional funding. Whereas nowadays, a lot of really good functions can be achieved on just standard Microsoft packages, zooming in, our different mobile phones or laptops where you can speak to them and it can type out what you say. So there's lots of really good functions and apps that you can get. But in addition, like Guernsey Blind are fantastic at helping to sort of review what somebody needs and trying to access different pieces of software or equipment. But there's a lot more available now than what there used to be.
Niamh, if we bring you in here, how did Guernsey Post, as an employer, and quite a substantial employer in the island, how did you get involved with the Guernsey Employment Trust?
We've got quite a big admin floor, different departments. Rosa works in customer services, but we've had people come in and work in our philatelic department, and we've got IT. We've got loads of different areas that people can come in and experience. And it's important to us that we're an inclusive employer, and that's why we got involved with GET, to make sure that we were doing everything we could possible to make sure that we were being inclusive and thinking about all of the reasonable adjustments that we could make, things that we could bring in. I know before Rosa came in, we had a meeting so she could come and have a look around the office, look at our IT setup, look at our phone setup, and just sort of see what adjustments we would need to make in order for her to have a good experience with us, and so that she could do as much as possible when she was working with us.
Are you able to tell us then, did Rosa do as much as possible when she was with you? Was she a hard worker? Did she get...
Yes, we got some really, really good feedback from the team. You definitely had an impact, you worked really hard, you got involved in absolutely everything that you could. So it's fantastic. It's a really big benefit to us as an employer, because those managers that are helping these work experience clients, they get that understanding through training of the reasonable adjustments and any sort of additional support that people need, their needs and wants and things like that as well.
Reasonable adjustments, that's a phrase that we've heard before because it came about when the states of Guernsey were debating anti-discrimination legislation. So reasonable adjustments in the workplace, using Guernsey Post as an example, what kind of reasonable adjustments were made or have been made for the workforce as a whole?
Yeah, so we have sit-stand desks available. We can look at bigger monitors, we can look at bigger keyboards, things like that. In terms of application forms, we've worked with the Guernsey Blind Associations, and we've got Braille application forms available. So if people want to apply, those are available for them. For us, it's really looking at the needs of the person that's coming in, seeing what more we can do to support them.
I would also jump in here from my experience of having worked with Guernsey Post, that you have a very good appetite to be more inclusive and supportive of individuals with mental health as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we've done a lot around that. We've got mental health first aiders. We've brought people in to do things on like sleep talks, healthy eating, all of that sort of stuff. We've got a wellbeing policy in place to really just support people in the workplace, because you spend a lot of your life at work, so it's important that you're happy and healthy in the workplace.
And how does that actually benefit the employer?
We've got quite a high length of service within our employment. I'd like to say we do look after our employees very, very well. We do as much as we can to keep them. We're always happy to support work placements, and that can be either someone comes in for 1 week, or we can do an extended work placement like we did with Rosa, because you came in over a 3-week period, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was supposed to be initially 3 weeks, and it got extended to 5.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we always look at things like that and see what we can do to support.
And Rosa, would you recommend to other people then, based on your experiences with GET? I mean, presumably it's a positive relationship because you've been involved with GET then for a few years. Would you recommend GET to other people and Guernsey Post as an employer?
Yeah, definitely GET, because they've got to really know me well and sort of also know what my disability issues are, so they know them in depth, so it's not just a surface level. So they can go, oh well, she can't do this job because of X, Y and Z, but let's try something similar.
Yeah.
So it's sort of what I can do, and it's sort of limited. And yeah, Guernsey Post were amazing. Literally anything, they're like, let's try this. Because we went about halfway through to the Guernsey Blind Association, so it was great to go, this is what I can't do, let's see if the Blind Association has some equipment. And ironically, the most simplest thing was a felt tip pen that made the most difference. You never thought, and some little sticky bods on the mouse, and that helped. But yeah, they were amazing. They would try anything. So yeah.
Presumably, from Get's point of view, Kate, then as a support worker, things that you must learn from working with clients and employers, as in Rosa and Guernsey Post's case, you must then be able to use that information in supporting other people.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, we are very much person-centred, focused on our clients, and they teach us so much, and it's a real privilege in that respect. And also it does help. Rosa was at Guernsey Post showing other colleagues in the department how to use the technology, how to change things on the screen. So actually we're talking about people who are highly skilled, who are able to teach lots of those skills to other people as well. And within our team at Get, we have sort of weekly meetings where we do share our experiences too, so we're continually learning from each other and from different situations. So that continues to build the knowledge within the team too.
Yeah, Rosa, how did that make you feel then when you were able to offer some training to your colleagues at Guernsey Post?
It felt very rewarding because I'm like, well, I'm just kind of used to it, even just making the screen. It's in my nature to do it, to sort of see it. And she went, oh, and like there was a shortcut to do it. And she's like, and then she like hadn't done it a while because I was sort of training with like most of the team, so they sort of got each individual's training skills and sort of took them. So by the time like I'd gone to her again, she was like, how do you do it? I'm like, here you go, move out the way. So yeah, it was really good. It felt good. So it was like they were teaching me and I was teaching them, so it was not just one-sided, so it was really good.
Yeah, it does sound like a partnership.
Definitely,
within the relationship, and presumably Nikki, Kate, that's what Get wants it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of our biggest shifts when we moved away from the old ways of working when we were States of Guernsey, because that used to sit within health and social care, very much our focus in how we delivered services was all focused on the clients, because we came from that background, but what we often ignored was the needs of employers and what they needed. And it's been quite a journey, but over the last few years I think we've really shifted our focus on, we've really got to understand the needs of both to get it right, because otherwise what will happen is that we will perhaps try and support a client but into a role that doesn't work for the employer, and then that knocks everybody's confidence along the way and it doesn't work out. So it's got to be a partnership between both to make it successful.
So there have been experiences where the partnership hasn't worked, the placement hasn't been right, and presumably that's where the support worker, being so closely involved, is able to step in. And
sometimes that's a good thing as well. When we arrange work experience, for example, it is a test. So for some people who've not been in work for a long time, or perhaps never worked, they don't know what is right for them. So work experience is a good opportunity for people to try things. And sometimes you try it and it's just not right. But that's good too, because then you work out, well, which bits weren't right. Was it the type of work you were doing, or was it the environment you were in, or was it perhaps because there weren't adjustments, or was it how busy the workplace was? So we can really then drill down, and that it really helps us to understand, to then perhaps arrange another work experience and filtering out bits that didn't work. So we all, in life, everybody makes mistakes, don't you? We all make mistakes, and we all learn from our mistakes and then move on and make changes. So it's not always a bad thing, but the whole point we spend so much time getting to know people is because as much as possible we do want to get it right, and that's why I think that reflects our retention rates being so high.
Yeah. So Guernsey Employment Trust, I've got here with me then the Disability Charter and the Good Practice Guide for Employers. Yes. And I'm guessing you've got much more material as well that you can share with clients and employers. Yes. But obviously a lot of work has gone into these. So there's, for example, the Disability Charter. This is something that I believe you're very proud of and you're wanting more businesses to sign up to. So what is it all about? What's it for?
Yeah, absolutely. We want more businesses to sign up to it. So we developed this in 2017, and that was when the talks of legislation, the discrimination legislation, seemed like years away. And what we wanted to do is create something tangible for employers who were committed to providing equity of opportunity, but wanted to know perhaps ways of going around it. So we wanted to give them something practical that they could be working towards. So we created the Employers Disability Charter, which has 9 commitments. But at the point of signing up, you're not saying that you are a platinum standard employer with regards to equity. It's more of an acknowledgement that you're starting out on a journey, and here are 9 steps that you could be taking, and you're acknowledging that you're working towards them. So we currently have 70 plus businesses signed up, and that ranges from very local businesses to the national and the international businesses, and we've got charities, we've got private sector, and we've got the States of Guernsey. And I think Guernsey is facing a recruitment crisis, so it makes good business sense for employers to really review and diversify how they attract new talent, and we are one solution to that. More and more, every day we receive emails from organisations like Guernsey Post with them sharing their vacancies because they want our help to fill their vacancies. So it's wonderful that we've got that wealth of knowledge to then share amongst our client group. And also many businesses as well, by signing up, it can act as a bit of a badge of honour. We physically give organisations a certificate, a trophy, and our logo that they can include in their adverts or their signatures if they want, or on their websites. But also many businesses, that there is this push to work towards CSR objectives or ESG initiatives, and it's a way of them being able to do that, but also helping them to work towards the legislation and meeting the requirements of that, because it's getting employers into good practice, it's breaking down stereotypes, it's providing opportunities for disabled people, and getting them used to providing reasonable adjustments just as they would do in everyday life, making the workplace accessible for everyone.
From Guernsey Post point of view, how useful was the charter? Is it quite daunting when you first look at it and think, do we meet the nine criteria, or was it helpful as kind of like a working process?
It's definitely helpful as a working process. I wouldn't say it's daunting.
Okay.
It's a good challenge to make sure that we are meeting all of those 9 steps. We definitely, I think we do that quite well. As part of that, we do that practically. We support by giving out leaflet drops and getting that sorted. And then again, obviously, the work experience is a big part of what we do. Like Nikki was saying, we make sure that any vacancies that we get, we send to get, so that they can have a review of them, see if they've got anyone suitable. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, you do send through applications for those roles, so that we can meet those people and interview them and stuff like that as well. So it is really helpful guide, and even just for things like making sure that we're being inclusive within our interview questions and stuff like that as well. So it's a very helpful guide to go.
Yeah. Interviews can be daunting, can't they? I mean, lots of people find job interviews, even interviews like we're doing now, can be daunting. And one of the charter criteria that I thought was interesting was that staff may be available to conduct mock or practice interviews for job seekers with a disability. That must just be so helpful for people with general nerves, people with anxiety, people who have never been to a job interview before.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Everybody hates interviews, and it's daunting for everyone. But generally speaking, the clients that we work with come to us because of anxiety or difficulties with communication. So for them, it's that extra barrier to employment, and especially for people who've perhaps had a gap on their CV.
Yeah.
And it's knowing how to talk about that gap in the right way. So we conduct mock interviews all the time in-house with our clients, and we try and make it as realistic as possible. But the truth is, they've got used to us now, and we don't necessarily use the industry-specific language for the areas that they're looking to go into. So one of the commitments of the Charter is to get employers on board with providing those mock interviews. And it's so valuable for the clients to get that experience, and also for them to perhaps ask some good questions of the employer to determine if that's the right work for them. But the feedback that we have from employers who take part in this is that they get a lot out of it as well. Because if they've perhaps never met somebody with a certain type of disability, they learn from having met that person. But also they perhaps are able to reflect on the way they're asking the questions perhaps aren't the most accessible. And the point of an interview is to try and determine, is this person the right fit for the job? But if the person hasn't quite understood what the question you're asking, they can't put themselves in the right way. So a lot of employers that we've worked with have said they've benefited from that experience too.
I did some mock interviews and found them really helpful because it was set up so when I did the interview I kind of had a sense of knowing this is what the way it's going to go, and it wasn't as daunting. So that's what I found that really useful. So yeah.
Was it your first experience of a job interview, or had you been to them before?
I'd been to them before, but it'd been a while because I was at university, so I hadn't done a proper interview before that in a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I found it very useful because I can go, well, these are sort of questions I'm going to ask you. I can formulate the answers, so I kind of know what I'm doing. So I wasn't as nervous when I went to the actual interview. And then when they did the mock interview, they did the interview, and it was two of them at Get and me. And then they gave me feedback with my support worker, which was Tanya. And it was really useful to go, well, you're good at these bits, but here's what we can make improve, so that I could work on it and go, well, these are better, and I can not as nervous and sort of know what I was doing. So yeah, definitely it was very useful.
In terms of signing up to the Charter then, and to find out more about the 9 commitments, and as you said, they don't need to be demonstrating all of them immediately, it's to work towards them all, and that commitment is there to work through them. How do people find out more?
Yeah, so to sign up, it's really simple. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. So if you go onto our website, which is get.org.gg, and click on employers, you will see a tab for the Charter, which provides information about the Charter. But basically, you can fill out a form, so you put your contact details, and then we assume that you're happy to sign up to each of the commitments, and you effectively tick them all off and submit your form, and then we'll be in contact. There are 8 commitments that everybody is signing up to, and then there is a 9th commitment which is bespoke for your business. So that's where Guernsey Post commitment to us was fantastic, because their commitment to us was about providing a postal drop to help raise awareness of our services. But we've seen other businesses provide commitments such as discounted haircuts for individuals going to interview to better their chances of getting into the workplace, or offering sort of bespoke disability awareness training as part of Diversity and Inclusion Week. So it can be as bespoke as possible to increase sort of the wealth of opportunities out there for people.
One thing that the island is finally doing this year, October 2023, we understand the anti-discrimination legislation is coming in. Rosa, we were talking before we came in to do the interview, you were saying that actually you've already seen examples of how businesses are changing. Is that right? To bring in these changes ahead of the law coming in?
Yeah, I went away to the UK for medical reasons, and on my most recent trip before with assistance, all you could check was a wheelchair. So I didn't need a wheelchair.
Yeah.
But I just needed to go before everyone else, so like pre-boarding, and that was the only option to pre-board. But then on my most recent trip, I told them I was partially sighted, and they put me as a blind passenger instead. So then they didn't. When I got to the check-in, they said, "Do you need X, Y, and Z? You need to go through security." So they sort of made adjustments. So, like at Gatwick, they have a little hub that you can go, and then they'll take you through security. And then we had a meeting with my support worker on Monday, and you said you were on training with them, with Aureli, weren't you?
Yes, I think locally employers are starting to, provide this, and it's great to see that clients such as Rosa's noticing the difference.
And definitely at the airport, it's the gateway in and out, isn't it? So it's great for Guernsey's reputation, I'm guessing. Aureli is, called Guernsey's airline. It's at Guernsey's airport, and I guess for other people to experience positive interactions as you have, Rosa, it's good for the island's reputation as a whole.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And in terms of the legislation then, it's coming in. Again, we've mentioned things like reasonable adjustments. It's not really big changes for most people, is it, Nikki, or Niamh, that people are being asked to bring in? Those reasonable adjustments, again, can be very small, but they'll make the world of difference to individuals and the employers, the businesses, and then hopefully the community.
I think the key term there is reasonable.
Yeah.
It has to be a reasonable adjustment, and as part of that, the business would would perhaps consider its size, its money. It would have to look at the impact on other people. But I think a common misconception about reasonable adjustments is that it's always those big ticket expensive items, but it could be adjusting somebody's hours because they rely on public transport, but for them they struggle to travel at those peak times for whatever reason, and instead of starting at 9, an adjustment for them could be they start at 10. It could be somebody with autism who has a sensitivity to noise, who struggles to sit next to the noisy photocopier, but if they were shifted three chairs down, it would be fine, and they'd be able to access work without being in pain. So I think it has to be reasonable for the business, and I think that's the key thing in this legislation.
At the very beginning, we were talking about the impact on the economy, because there is an economic value, isn't there, to encouraging more people into the workplace. Can get help any more people?
We do have a waiting list. I think with any service, if you didn't have a waiting list, it would imply that you therefore don't, there isn't a need. So I think there always has to be a slight one. We did get our list down to a really good point, just pre-COVID level. And obviously with COVID, it was really hard to get people into employment. Because the jobs weren't out there. There were frontline worker roles, but that wasn't necessarily suitable for everyone. Also, there were a lot of people who we didn't have much to do with anymore, in that they didn't need much support from us. But due to the increased pressures on their role, or their supportive line manager moving on, or all these new COVID measures put in place, they needed a lot more support. So we really had to adjust. We became a bit of a helpline for people as well during that time. So our office might not have been open, but for some people we were their only contact, and we were there touching base with them every day, checking that they were well, checking they had everything they needed, they were safe. So we just had to shift our business model for a bit. But the impact of that meant that our waiting list did go up. But also, actually, we received huge numbers of referrals in to our service for people who are disabled but were not part of our service previously. Maybe they've been in work for many, many years and then lost their role during COVID times. Or COVID made them... It made people reassess things a lot, and I think some people reached out to services during that time and perhaps received a diagnosis. So we did see a spike in the numbers of people coming in. But the impact of that has then meant we have got a waiting list. So at the moment, it's approximately 4 or 5 months. If we had more employment support officers, then we'd be able to work with more clients. But that's where we're at the moment.
But in terms of employers then, is there a waiting list for employers to access services or support? Can they
No,
can get in touch?
if an employer needs our support, they can pick up the phone at any time. I mean, one thing that we produced recently, we've recently launched it. In fact, that was the focus of our Guernsey Postal Drop. We've developed effectively an off-the-shelf training package for employers. So we've got two different offerings actually. We've got a 1 hour one, which fits perfectly for a lunch and learn, or it can slot into a team meeting. And this is just about raising awareness about disability inclusion. Or we have a more in-depth interactive session that goes over 2.5 hours, and that's aimed at managers, HR professionals and anyone else involved in recruitment decisions to help create deeper insight. So a bit of a plug, anyone who's thinking about that at the moment, we've got a special offer actually. So it does come at a bit of a charge, but there's a 20% discount for anyone that gets it booked in before the 1st of October when the discrimination legislation comes out. And we've got a form on our website that people can just fill it in, and then we'll be in contact to get it booked in.
Thank you for listening to The Interview, a Bailiwick Express podcast. If you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe. You can find us on all social media channels, and if you'd like to keep up to date on all the work the Express team does, please sign up to our daily email by visiting gsy.bailiwickexpress.com.